Peace. We are coming down the home stretch. Thanks for joining us for the 7th and final module. This time, we'll outline all the different ways that social media research dissemination is relevant to the research plan itself, including the evaluation plan, recruiting participants, and even statistical analyses and report writing. This module relies and builds on several resources and lots of information already provided to IRL fellows, including the Building a Communication Strategy workshop presented by Kristen Rosengren and Lauren Adams at Academy Health. Stakeholder Engaged Dissemination and Implementation presented by Shobha Ramanandan, MPH Senior Scientist, Center for Community-Based Research, and Austin Frott and Aaron Carroll's work on academic dissemination in media. I actually want to end this mini course where our IRL Program Director and University of Minnesota Associate Vice President for Research, Michael Oakes, began his. In that mini course titled Research Literacy and Introduction to Causal Inference, Michael challenged us to be passionately dispassionate about our work, to not let our personal ideologies, hopes, and dreams get in the way of scientific understandings about the world. This challenge really makes me think hard about social media, where passions and opinions and conjecture often run high. In Module 3 of this mini course, I made the statement that social media research dissemination is more about the social than it is about the research. Now I'm going to contradict that, which is all Michael's fault. Okay, here we go. Let's look at how social media research dissemination can be used for project design, participant recruitment, project evaluation, data analysis and reporting, and securing funding. This notion, Michael's notion of being passionately dispassionate, I think can also be seen, again, in the conversation that started our mini course about the roles of media in society in general. I think all too often, researchers and members from the higher education or academic or policy sort of world can get away with having consumers simply adopt what they say because it starts with these 4 words, a new study shows. I think this gives provides a wonderful sort of opportunity for us to think carefully about the responsibility that we have when we leverage something like science in an explanation or science in an argument. And so I just wanted to kind of use that as a context for thinking about social media research dissemination in each of these particular areas. All of our projects are in the general category of community-based participatory research. And to do this type of work in earnest, we must remember the 4 main types of communication goals: awareness, engagement, advocacy, and action, which our friends at Academy Health pointed out in that presentation that I referenced in the syllabus can be seen sort of as a continuum. Each of these communication goals can be accomplished using social media. For researchers we work with at the SMRDI, we plan tweets strategically to target each of these goals: awareness, engagement, advocacy, and action. In the beginning of a project, more time and effort is put into tweets for awareness and engagement. But as the project progresses, more social media activity and energy is put towards advocacy and action. Also, virtually all of the major academic publishing houses have Twitter accounts and regularly tweet publication news and upcoming special issues that can be extremely helpful in informing literature reviews. Let's talk participant recruitment. In Module 3, we looked at social media and participant recruitment. That NIH study that we referenced then pointed out how attractive social media is because it can enable investigators both to reach wider segments of the populations that they're interested in, populations that may not be accessible or even know about the research in the first place, but also to target individuals on the basis of their personal information. I read an article in today's Wall Street Journal actually about how admissions offices are now data mining information on applicants. So when an admissions office sends an email to a prospective applicant at the university, they can tell whether or not the applicant opened the email. They can tell how many seconds it was between when they opened it and when they clicked on a link. They can tell if they responded or if they forwarded the email to someone else. And then that information is actually being used as part of admissions decisions. So we truly live in a brave new world where information collection and data mining is being used to make evidence-based decisions. Social media research dissemination is no exception. So my recommendation, we also pointed out in that earlier module that one of the scary parts, or concerns at least, on the part of the research community is that from an ethical standpoint, in terms of the compliance regulations on how to use social media in safe ways that don't introduce risk or concerns on the part of the volunteers, the participants themselves. It's not really any regulatory guidelines at this, as of this point. My advice there is to just be proactive. Have this conversation with people, with your compliance personnel. Talk to the IRB about your intent to use social media in order to actively identify and recruit participants, and have that conversation. While there isn't a whole lot in terms of actual regulations, IRBs are great at working with researchers in terms of finding ways. So they won't know what you want unless you put that, unless you say what you want, specify your intention to use social media in these ways in your protocols. At least then the conversation can be opened up. So be as innovative and proactive as you can when thinking about participant recruitment on social media. And project evaluation. So we mentioned, again, in the outset, in the introductory module for this mini course, the critical need for social media research dissemination to inform the entire process of conducting the work. This is also true in program and project evaluation. Increasingly, RFPs are asking for researchers proposing studies to demonstrate how they will be evaluated, either internally or by external evaluators. Social media plays a role in the evaluation process as well. The evaluation of your project is a good way of thinking about developing what's been referred to as a long-term research agenda. Here's a publication titled "Toward a Research Agenda for Understanding and Improving the Use of Research Evidence," and the evaluation process plays a very sort of central role. Evaluations involve the programs, what are the program factors, which evaluation design is best for us, and us in this case as the researchers, and then of course thinking about the reporting, dissemination, and use side. Talk to your evaluator about their experience evaluating projects that involve social media. You may find that the person doing your external evaluation has lots of familiarity and comfort and experience working with designs or working with researchers that are actively engaging participants or external stakeholders using social media. You might find the opposite, but at least then again, you as the team leader, as the PI, as folks on the project side of your study will know what you're sort of working with. Project evaluation usually unfolds in terms of project development and an evaluation cycle. So an iterative process that starts at some point, perhaps with the needs assessment and the collection of baseline data, but then cycles through the implementation of the project, through the evaluation, and then modifying the project and the plans, and then sort of rinsing and repeating those steps, right? So this gives rise to formative versus summative evaluation. And the best metaphor I think I've ever heard that sort of captures the difference between formative and summative evaluation is formative evaluation is when the cook is tasting the meal, and summative evaluation is when the customer is tasting the meal, right? So very different goals here in tasting food during the cooking process. Formative is, hey, we're still cooking this thing. We're making it. We need to taste it as we're making it to tell us if we're going down the right path. Hey, does it need more of this? Does it need less of that? Perhaps we need to make different changes in how we're going about our plans. Social media is awesome for that sort of work, because by sharing what's going on with your project, particularly in community-based participatory research models, you will get the sort of feedback that you're looking for from community. So in several of the projects from our work that involve working with teachers and parents in the context of school districts, parents who have jobs, kids, in some case, increasingly kids who are, starting to have work responsibilities. Communicating what's happening with the project in general through social media enables the researchers to know what they're planning to know, or at least to think about how what they're planning fits in, for example, in the schedules of the individuals that are going to be involved. Social media is a wonderful way of getting immediate feedback that will help you make decisions about how you're actually going about the work itself. And then also on the summative side. So after a preliminary finding has been sort of drafted, or maybe there's a report that's coming out, or even a schedule for future project plans, these types of summative evaluations can also be can also leverage social media in powerful ways. So simply generating evaluation findings for the evaluator is not really the point, right? This quote from Patton in 2008 says simply generating evaluation findings is of relatively little importance compared to creating a context for which evaluation findings are actually used for decision making and improvement. So the who, the how, the what, the when, the where, and the why, these are all pieces that on social media can sort of be fleshed out. Here's a slide taken from an earlier presentation that also kind of gets at the idea of tacit knowledge sharing in social media. So the social media space involves, as we pointed out over the course of this module, social interaction, right? But doesn't stop there. The experience of sharing possibilities and the practice of listening and observing and watching, the informal relationships and networking that all sort of go into what the social media space involves or is sort of predicated on. All of those are positives when it comes to the process of thinking about how to evaluate a study. Again, if at the outset these are things that you are interested in, for example, the connections between your research participants, or the ability for research participants to actually weigh in or provide guidance in terms of how a study operation or strategy is to unfold. These are things that you could actually develop measures for in the social media space because social media enables, again, individuals in a very democratic way of focusing in or dedicating their energy in ways that you can measure with those Twitter business analytics. Here's a cartoon. I think I originally first saw this one in Austin and Aaron's presentation, but it sort of just captures, again, like the reality that a lot of times social researchers in the social space are totally missing the fact that the social is kind of the point. So have you read my blog yet? Why I don't even find you interesting in person. If these dynamics and if these understandings of the work that we're doing en route to building a culture of health aren't interesting to people sort of a priori, then they won't be interesting in the research. There's nothing magical about the academic's job of using science to uncover answers and find solutions, right? This has to be done on a person-to-person, very sort of connected basis. Which brings us to data analysis and reporting. In 2018, Cohort 1 convened a meeting in Puerto Rico to provide support for victims of Hurricane Maria. And I was fortunate to participate. Shout out to Dr. Sophia George and Maribel Rivera to help that cohort think about social media research dissemination. We had some really great conversations and dialogue around some new and emerging technologies out there that are at the intersection of data analysis and reporting and digital media. Here is what's called a story map for the Health Effects After Renovation project. Story maps can be integrated into social media with audiences that allow audiences to visualize and see project updates and data analyses, findings, and plans in a very sort of cohesive way. So here we see a story map minus the audio of this particular study out west, and the information that's in the story map can actually be extracted and again integrated into social media. So even how we think about data analysis and reporting is impacted by including a social media perspective. As we mentioned in one of the earlier modules, the dissemination plans themselves have gone from supplemental or extra or bonus in many ways to an actual requirement at the request for proposal stage. And so the social media, right, plays a major role in those dissemination plans. The NSF grant proposal guide, for example, uses a series of questions that require the proposer to illustrate broader impacts. So in the broader impacts criteria, they ask questions like, how well does the activity advance discovery and understanding while promoting teaching, training, and learning? How well does the proposed activity broaden the participation of underrepresented groups? For example, gender, ethnicity, disability, geographic, etc. To what extent will it enhance the infrastructure for research and education, such as facilities, instrumentation, networks, and partnerships? Will the results be disseminated broadly to enhance scientific and technological understanding? What may be the benefits of the proposed activity to society? These are all questions that have roots these are all questions that are rooted in the basic premise of social media, which is that by connecting individuals, the information flow and transmission ends up more than the sum of its parts. So I would encourage you not to just to launch into social media for your research dissemination without putting a plan in place first. Thank you for joining me for this mini course on social media research dissemination. Thanks to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for its ongoing support of JomaWorks and its efforts to build a culture of health. Thank you also to Mandy Labresh, Haley Curidan, Nora Marino, Sarah Gollist, Ezra Goldberstein, and the entire IRL Ops team for making this mini course a reality. I hope you found it useful and not unuseful. Lastly, I want to thank everyone at the Social Media Research Dissemination Initiative for sharing their energy and genius for this course as well. Talk to you soon.